So, everyone hear me good? Okay. So, welcome everyone. Thanks for coming. This is our first meeting. We're trying to organize this coalition. I've called it a place for us. I don't know. I really like West Side Story. So, uh, basically, our purpose is to try and create better shelter options for the LGBT community as well as other communities who are kind of disenfranchised by the current systems in play in Lansing, such as forced religious services, which aren't good for religious minorities and people with religious trauma. Um, and there's a whole plethora of issues that affect the trans community and LGBT community in general that uh, we face a lot of problems with when seeking shelter as unhoused individuals. So we're here to kind of just brainstorm solutions and work towards creating policy change in the existing shelters around Lansing and look into possibly creating an LGBT shelter in Lansing as well in the future, though that's going to be a long term project and going to take a lot of funding and a lot of time. So, uh, we'll just get into the agenda then. So number two on the agenda is reviewing meeting goals and objectives. Kind of just did that a little bit, but so yeah. Part of the purpose of today's meeting of what we're doing too is raising awareness about these issues, because in order to get the policy change we're seeking and the things we're asking for, we're going to have to let the public know what issues we're facing in the trans community. Um, basically, yeah, we're building a coalition of stakeholders interested in these policy changes and working towards the exploring the feasibility and establishing an LGBTQ shelter for our population to be served. So a lot of groups that have been working on this. I know Lon's been looking into this a bit. There's some of these issues are kind of being addressed with the rent is too damn high. I know as well, and they're trying to pass a homeless bill of rights, which would address a lot of these issues. So those are good things to come, hopefully. But we need to work with other organizations that are working towards these things to hopefully make sure they get passed and get to the people they need to get to. Um, so first off, probably go over some of the challenges faced by the groups we're hoping to serve, and anyone feel free to jump in on this if you know some issues. There's a lot of issues that contribute to the issues we're facing. For one, LGBT people are at a very high risk for homelessness due to housing and employment discrimination. So we end up unhoused in higher numbers than the general population. And then when we become unhoused, we have a very difficult time getting help to get everything kind of back together and everything and get in back into housing. And a big part of this is the shelters, which even for the general population can be unsafe. There's a lot of crime that happens within these shelters. And even when the shelters try to be accommodating towards us, the other residents often aren't. And that can become a huge problem because we face discrimination at all levels. Some of them are discriminatory even with staffing, and like you look at the city rescue mission, they have policies in place right now that they do not allow employment of anyone who is LGBTQ. And even though they claim they are trying to be inclusive, you just by the very nature of having this policy in place, it's going to trickle down and reach the residents of these shelters, even if that's not their intended like consequence of them, and they may be trying to get become inclusive in practice. In theory, like in practice this doesn't really work out right when at their upper levels and in their administration they're still openly discriminatory towards employees. um, Many people who've been in these homes, like when they try and can talk to staff about the issues they're facing with other residents or even other staff, they're basically turned away and ignored. They're often literally told to take a Bible and go pray about it, which doesn't do anyone any good, and if anything is more harmful than helpful. Um, then there's so we're kind of getting into number three a little bit too, but some of the policies in place that some of these homes right now do have specific transgender housing options. They're generally minimal. It usually just involves having a separate unshared bedroom. But the people are still assigned into a shelter based on their birth sex rather than their gender. And this creates a lot of conflict and problems both with other residents and with staff. Um, I don't know. Would anyone else like to share any like things they've observed within the shelter system? Anyone who here has experience personally with the shelter system? Do you want to talk about some of the issues y'all faced when staying in shelters?
I was 19 and I stayed in a dorm with, not counting me, 13 other women, and I faced like threats of physical violence just because of my gender presentation. Um, Gosh, there's probably more, but it's escaping me right now. But it wasn't a comfortable situation because I just got disrespect all the time just for the way I dress and how I act and basically who I am.
When I stayed at Holy Cross. They didn't really like force it. There wasn't really like a chapel service, but I know some of the other women did not like me being there because I was trans, and they told me. Well, they didn't say it directly to me, but behind my back, they said I made them uncomfortable because of who I am. So yeah, I was housed with women because I was born a female. Obviously, even though I present male, they still forced me to room with the other woman.
Uh, let's see, 13, 14, well, 2009, 10, 11. I had the experiences of going to the mission a bit. And I'm not, I'm just, you got the old white guy straight here supporting your cause because having been at the mission, I see a lot of discrimination. There's a lot of people with mental, physical, spiritual problems. And the frustration comes out, and mostly to the LGBTQ people community, and hopefully something can be done about it. And then hopefully it'll affect all levels of it because everybody's discriminated, everybody's stereotyped. The staff stereotypes everybody. I never went in there drunk, high, whatever, but I was treated like I had been, and I was on watch. But yeah, it needs a lot of changes.
My name is Ligia, and I work at Lansing Area AIDS Network. And we refer a lot of individuals to the shelters. And I think it's more than just the issue of LGBT and trans. These shelters are not equipped to, and they're not educated on mental health, substance abuse. They lack knowledge on these areas, and a lot of our individuals go into the shelters that have mental health issues, but they have not been given the services because community mental health is just overwhelmed. The substance abuse issues as well. There are no services. If you don't have insurance, you don't get services. So it's multi-layered from what we're able to see at our agency. And our agency was able to meet with City Rescue Mission because we were vocal about how they were treating our clients. And we did tell them, encourage them that they needed education. They needed education on how to deal with individuals that have mental health issues. They need education on how to treat or deal with individuals that have substance abuse issues. That just because my client is gay, it doesn't mean that they're going to be, going after someone that is heterosexual. There's been accusations like that against one of our individuals. Well, he's gawking. He's gawking at one of our males. And I'm going, is there something wrong with your male that is straight that's why our client is looking at them? It's not about sex. It's not a sexual thing. And we feel very strongly that these shelters need a lot of education, a lot of education. And I guess I don't even know where we would be able to start with that. So
Hi, my name's Amanda. I have worked in public mental health for 19 years, and I've done hotline work as well besides that. And I worked in crisis residential for 12 years and crisis services for 4 before I left. And I've had to ask a lot of people to go into the shelter system. When I was at Bridges Crisis Unit, I took the time to ask the shelters to come in so we can learn about them. And as a case manager, I took the time to go with my clients to the shelter and witness firsthand a lot of everything: poverty, disparities, substance use, fear, trauma, overwhelmed staff, inappropriate staff, bad policy. Um, and one of the things that we've lost in this town that I don't know if people are aware of, there used to be a private shelter that we kept on the down low called Richard's Place. And it cost $79,000 a year that CMH provided that funding for that particular shelter. And it helped not only transgendered individuals, but people with mental health distresses and other things going on. But it was so super small, even that wasn't enough. But that was helpful to have a different space, just changing up spaces. I yeah, it was a house, and people were able to go there, and we even had the opportunity to have it ran by a transgendered individual, and that was just wonderful to see. But we lost the agency. I'm not we. The agency lost the funding or chose not to refund it. Um, so I'm putting that out there, but the policies are bad in this town. And it is sad that you have to go to a shelter and then be shamed if you don't agree with what they believe in their system. And I do worry that as we talk about this, the city itself doesn't really want shelters here. And so this will just be an excuse to get rid of them altogether. And so I've expressed that fear to Luna. But thank you for letting me talk.
Thanks everyone for sharing. Um, I, I I know what you talked on, like needing education. Like that is a huge part of what like I hope we can do, honestly. And I think that that's one of the big parts of the policy change we need to see is require education for all these shelters on mental health issues, LGBTQ issues, religious diversity, like a whole plethora of different things they need education on. And I I'm not real sure what trainings the different shelters go through right now, but it's clearly not working, and we really need to look at what we can do to make sure every staff person at those places are trained on how to deal with anyone who walks through the door. Richard's Place, I know, was a huge loss for our community too. Like, as far as I know, it's the only place that's really ever been really affirming towards trans people in our community and LGBT people in our community, as well as one of the few places that doesn't try and push their religion onto people staying there. Some worse than others. Um, I don't know. I guess this kind of goes into number 4, identifying the key issues. And we just talked about a lot of those big key issues. Education plays a huge role in this, and willingness to educate your employees as well. Like, and that's where I worry we may see some resistance too. Especially, I don't think we'll see as much resistance on issues like mental health, but when it comes to issues like religious diversity, gender and sexual diversity, um, and even like just like learning about other different stigmatized groups in our populations, I think we may see some pushback, and that's one thing that worries me. But I think what we have to do is honestly just keep putting pressure on them. I know rescue mission's been feeling the pressure a lot lately because we've been speaking out against them, at least at the last 2 city council meetings. Myself and others have all been there to share our experiences and experiences of our friends and people we've known who've had to stay in these shelters, and it has not been good for their reputation. And I don't know. I don't know. They've even reached out to me. The rescue mission has, to try and address it. It wasn't Mark Chris who reached out to me though. I don't know what I would have said to him, but and, like, some of their other staff do seem concerned about these issues, which is a good sign. The trick is getting their administration on board too, because they're the ones who are going to decide whether these trainings ever take place and the policy changes we need ever happen. Um,
I used to work at Volunteers of America, now New Hope, and just on the like training aspect, I feel like a lot of the training is like your stereotypical like um, discrimination, inclusion, like, but it's all on a portal. Like you click through it, you're not necessarily sitting there taking in the information. So I think that kind of altering how people are taught these things, and whether it's like a presentation, like we go to like like a summit kind of vibe or something like that. I think that altering that type of training is necessary, because otherwise people, if they're there, like employees are there for longer than a year, it's the same repeat information. It's not updated, it's not new. I mean, sometimes it's updated, but not very often. And so I think that that's a good point to look at too, as well as I know you said getting like administration on the board, but I think too like frontline workers, so the ones that are taking in like the intake forms and everything like that, they, not that they're, I mean, that you're going to see them more often than you're going to see it like larger administration. So getting them, I think, on board and getting them to these types of meetings too would be really important, and having them part of the conversation.
yeah, that's good point. Like even if we can't get administration on board, I think it would be good for us to create working relationships with other staff at these places and to continue to like reach out, and that's we that's definitely something we need to kind of create a plan for. That kind of brings us to coalition building. Um, a- and I'm really hoping we can get some of these other shelters to join the coalition and to work with us directly rather than us having to constantly just come to them and tell them what changes need to be made for them to be more affirming and accepting of everyone. Um, that could be tricky. I think we could probably get some of their staff involved. A lot of the staff are very genuinely very caring and really do want to help everyone. Um, it can be tricky though to get administration, especially since all our shelters in Lansing are faith based. Some are straight up religious organizations that require you to attend chapel service just to stay there. Will literally throw you out if they find you're using drugs or even drinking or doing any substances. Uh, I don't know. Like some of the policies they have in place, a lot of them, like again, I'll refer to Rescue Mission because they're the one that's. There's also another one I can't remember the name of it, but Jody Washington actually runs it. But they are also a religious mission that, uh, yeah, Endeavor. Yeah, they also require chapel service and have some similar policies to the rescue mission, and these are the ones that are going to need the most work, but they're also going to give us the biggest challenges and put up the most most resistance because they have basically religious exemptions, which means they don't have to follow the policies that the state has in place that tries to regulate the shelters and tries to make sure that shelters are being open and inclusive towards everyone. The other shelters, while they're still faith based, are at least making attempts to move in that direction. They're not outright discriminating, but that doesn't mean discrimination doesn't still exist there. It just means they don't have it as an official policy. Um, and those are going to be, I think, the easiest places to start is trying to get them more in line with what we need to see. But uh the 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 biggest organization in this town though is a religious organization, and they're going to be the hardest to really see these changes, and I'm not 100% sure honestly where we're going to start with that other than trying to reach out to various staff there and trying to get change internally, even if it's not on an administrative level. Um, in terms of coalition building, though, yes, we want them to get involved, but what other organizations do we need to reach out to? What other organizations would be good to get involved in our group um, that anyone knows about?
I think one of the organizations that might be worth working to help reduce some of the friction we're going to be running into is a group called Inclusive Justice Michigan. They are a local group of people who are in faith and clergy that are trying to be inclusive. I just went to one of their workshops in Ferndale last Friday, and there's a lot of work, and the most of the topic was about how do we be more inclusive to LGBT people in like informing, educating, and stuff like that. So there are efforts being done here, and having having access to other parts of people in this like religious circle, I think can help us build pressure and finding out like allies who help speak the language to help change these into better ways that are supportive to our cause, but also speak the language that these people are working with.
Um, the mayor has been actively participating with our agency, attended Pride, the AIDS Walk, and I think he would be a source. I really think we need to invite him to these events, these gatherings, so that he can hear what's going on. I really don't think he knows. I'm not quite sure if he, you know what I mean? And I think if we were to invite him to these gatherings and let him know what we are encountering as a community, as agencies that serve the LGBTQ community, um, I think that would be a start. Um, that's, I mean, that's that's how I feel, you know, because he will have some source of power with funding when the time comes, you know, when if we were to ask for funding. Um, but he's the political piece, you know, that I feel we need to invite to these meetings.
There's a group called the um, Michigan Coalition Against Homelessness, MCAH. They're a statewide group. I haven't really worked extensively with them, but they seem um, legit and progressive and justice oriented. So maybe they have some resources, or they might have some knowledge of how this issue has been going down in other cities across the state, and if there's anybody else who has explored local solutions like what you're talking about here. Um, and the other body that comes to mind, similar kind of to the mayor, is the Ingham County Housing Trust Fund, which is a county board which is intending to secure funding to spend on affordable housing. Most of their focus has been on things like homeowner assistance, down payment assistance, and supporting some low income rental development projects. They haven't so far done stuff that was more shelter oriented, because I think they're concerned with trying to provide permanent housing. Um, but they are kind of trying to do things a little differently and not just give money away to all of the same usual suspects. So if there were to be an organized presence there that was reflecting a need for um, LGBTQ sheltering, you might find an audience there, or they may be able to help think about other places to go get resources.
Also, Shelter Now coalition in Ypsilanti, I think, is doing sort of like a similar. I think it's like a group of different organizations, but are working on getting like a 24/7 warming shelter in Ypsilanti. So they might have other kind of like Lansing connections or statewide connections.
Hi, so I don't have a lot of experience in this area, but I have had the opportunity to visit Sycamore Creek Church in Lansing. They're a very open, welcoming, affirming church. And so the conversation was talking about getting some of our faith partners in to sort of, you know, speak the language to to these other organizations. I think you could find some friends there. So I think that's definitely a good resource to check out.
Wait, on the Facebook group, we have had a few like businesses and organizations. I know the Unitarian Church seems to be on board, which I wasn't surprised by at all. They're pretty social justice oriented. I think UCC would be a good one to look into getting involved with us as well in terms. I think getting some religious organizations could be very helpful in this cause as a whole, especially since most of the groups we're going to be like working with to create policy changes and stuff are faith-based organizations, I think it'd be really good to have other faith-based groups on the coalition, because they might be better equipped on how to, in terms of like knowing the language and stuff that we need to use with the people we're trying to convince. But yeah, all great ideas. You get the cool, awesome. Let's see. So I have up next sharing personal experiences. We've kind of been doing that a little bit already, but would anyone like to, who hasn't or would like to share more about their experiences on this issue?
You keep that mic. We'll pass
Okay.
this one around.
I worked briefly. Oh, I'm Melly, by the way. Hi, everyone. I worked briefly at St. Vincent de Paul, which kind of is a front line in stopping houselessness and homelessness in the Lansing area. But I have heard since I left that policies have changed there and has made it harder for people to receive the help. I think if we look into what those policy changes have been made, I have a couple connections still there that maybe we can also start a little bit of before we get to that point, helping people keep their house, helping people keep their utilities on. So I think there's and they also just give out clothes and stuff. So I don't know how hard they've made it since I've left, but that's also another resource that we could talk to. I still know a couple people there.
Yeah, I think, yeah, St. Vincent's would be great to reach out to. And like, I think it would be good to reach out to basically any group that works with the homeless population too, even outside of the shelter setting in the long run. Because this, I mean, this impacts people in all areas that offer services to the unhoused. We definitely need to be looking into all of their policies really in the long run. I mean, the shelters are a huge focus for. Oh, Kelsey, all right, here you go. But yeah, I don't know. We definitely. I think we need to create some sort of. I think it's on here, but like create some sort of steering committee though, for this group to try and do the background organizing as well. I can't continue to do the whole thing on my own. Obviously, Mel's working, gonna be doing our secretarial type stuff from now, which they offered to help with, which is awesome. But too, if anyone would like to get involved behind the scenes too, in between the meetings, that would be a great help. Something we can talk about more during the meeting or afterwards. Was originally going to do breakout groups, but that could be complicated now that we're live streaming it and everything. So I think it'd be better just to have an open discussion. So basically, I'm just going to open it up. Anyone who has any ideas for strategies we can use, ideas, what directions the group should take, what you want to see from future meetings, that sort of stuff. I'm hoping we can get some speakers at some future meetings. I didn't really have time, and I just moved this week too, so it's been really hard for me to do a lot of the background stuff. So I wasn't able to get a speaker booked for this week, but I would like to have speakers at future meetings that work in this area and possibly even outside of Lansing addressing this issue. I think that would be a good idea to see in the future. But if anyone has any ideas they'd like to share right now, where you want to see this go, what things you think we need to be doing.
I can go. As I just thought of something. So we want to try to work on improving the shelter situation and stuff like that. And what was your name again? What was that? So Hannah said something about like having like a workshop or a summit. Is that something that we could try to work on getting speakers and producing here at the Fledge to just say, hey, workers,
Oh yeah.
come here. Like we have punks with lunch here who works in harm reduction. We have
Yeah.
people who work with this populations, and we can just say, if you don't feel ready, come here, work with us for a day, and we'll get you there. You know, I think that could be a way we can do this.
I think setting up our own workshops for the community would be a great idea. Especially if we can get people involved to do that, to help with that, that would be amazing. And I think that would be great for trying to get those policy changes in the existing shelters for sure.
Well, I know there's an avenue of getting a mental health first aid trainer involved, so that maybe getting a help make raising funding or whatever needs to happen so that shelter staff can get mental health first aid training, and getting a trainer paid to come in and do it or volunteer.
Yeah, that'd be good. I know CMH, I think, offers some of that stuff. I don't know. I could probably talk to Sarah about it too. I'm on the Consumer Advisory Council for CMH, so I talk to them pretty frequently. I'll definitely bring that up at the next meeting. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to step out early in a minute, which is so I'll just say before I go that sooner or later, I think it would probably be good to make a choice whether to focus on policy change at the existing shelters or building the new shelter, and just understand that doing both of those at once all at the same time will probably be a lot of work.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I don't know which will be most urgent, but that's just a thought. And then I'll just also note that I'm the coordinator for the Rent is Too Damn High Coalition, which some of you are aware of and are part of. And that's a group now of 47 and growing organizations in Lansing, but also around the state, that are concerned about housing justice, tenants' rights, and rights for the unhoused. So as this group develops, I just want to extend solidarity from that coalition and say that the more that we can be in touch, and if there comes to a point where there's a really clear ask that is coming from a place for us, for the city government or at whatever level, I think people in the Rent is Too Damn High would be excited to get behind that as part of the larger fight that a lot of people are fighting.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh yeah, that's definitely a good point. Like I do think we're gonna definitely need to focus on one or the other, and I think realistically, at least in my eyes, like working with the existing shelters is definitely the more feasible option, at least right now. Because like I've looked in like a little bit to the cost of opening a shelter, and we're looking at having to like somehow raise like most likely at least $1 million just to get started. So definitely the policy change would be a lot more feasible, I feel, at least at this time. Though I'd still love to see a LGBT specific shelter in Lansing. I like policy change is definitely way more feasible.
I was just going to say that I agree with Will, just in terms of like thinking about like if these shelters with discriminatory practices are privately funded, there's not really like they don't have like accountability to the public if they're not publicly funded. And thinking about like, the city has accountability to the public and sort of making it known that like, hey, the city of Lansing has an obligation to house people and has an obligation for the housing to be safe. Like, I don't know, the way I think about it feels like it might work better. But also, like, that being said, like, I don't think trying to, promote reforms at the existing shelters in the short term is necessarily a bad idea. Yeah, I don't know.
I think that because this is such a, like, there's so many layers to this, like, it's very intersectional, there's a lot going on, so I think that having bullet points of what exactly, like, we're looking to change or impact would be helpful, because there are so many layers to just homelessness and the queer community and everything else, and they all impact one another. It's like a domino effect. So I think having that clear-cut vision of, like, what exactly we want to change or help improve. And then I was going to say, there used to be these meetings that were called Continuum of Care, and a lot of other, head nods. I saw a lot of other, like, local organizations are there, so I feel like that would also be a good starting point of where to build relationships with other stakeholders and community members too, to get them involved, or even to, like, have somebody here speak on behalf of the group, or something like that.
There was a story in the news last week, a couple of them really, about Susan Cancro that runs the Advent House, Mark Chris, and they've been at it 30 years. And the article is saying that homelessness right now is at its worst that it's been in a couple decades. So I think there needs to be a push for a changing of the guard of all these agencies. Holy Cross did it after they took over from VOA. I don't know what good it's done. They got rid of a lot of people that were in the front office, and I can't see much change around there when I do go. I only go over there now to go to the clinic, Sparrow Health Clinic. That's my primary care after I got out of homelessness and on insurance and stuff. But they've been at it 30 years. They've failed. Why are they still getting raises? Go ahead and retire your nice, pretty house. Take away your pension, all the money that you've already earned, taken away from all these programs that should have already helped alleviate some of these problems with the LGBTQ community.
I agree with that. I just want to say
Hi, friends. My name is Kelsey. I work for an organization called For Future Michigan, and also I'm involved with the Fledge and one of the core coordinators with the Run and Student High movement. And really happy to be here. I think this is a really important conversation to be having. Sorry, I'm a little bit late. Couple thoughts. One is, it seems like with the Lansing area, the city of Lansing is taking on a lot, but we really need to be pressuring the surrounding areas like East Lansing, Okemos, Hazlitt, Holt, Grand Ledge to be taking on as well. I know they have the new warming shelter system that we fought so hard for, but it does not seem sustainable. And so we're going to have that hurdle with city council to figure out the all of that. But I do think that this is a very important conversation that is well overdue. I know a lot of times people who start in shelters, and that's like their calling or whatever you want to refer to at their vocation. But I also do agree there needs to be a turning of the guard. At some point, you've got to hand it off to someone else. And I just think that's good for organizations in general to be doing that somewhat on a schedule. But yeah, I know interacting with Mark Chris City Council, he compared me to a pedophile because of it. Just he seems like a really dodgy person personally, but I am more interested in systems versus personalities. I do know that there is a progressive housing coalition that Rebecca Kaysen and Mike Carl are in, focusing on housing first versus services. So rapid rehousing, that's something that the Run and Student High Coalition is also involved in. But I think the main takeaway for me is, who do we have that's in power or has connections in East Lansing, Hazlitt, Okemos, Holt, all these other places that can take that on, so whether that be a warming center in a library, a community center, what have you, these other towns around us should be taking this on as well, because Lansing itself does not have the funding that we need. So I think those are all my thoughts for right now. But yeah, I would love to meet with any of you and talk about this kind of stuff. It's housing advocacy is something that is very, very important to me, and is important to my organization as well. So I think that's it.
I definitely have to agree with that on like especially with Okemos and East Lansing. They're the wealthiest like cities in
Yeah, they're
like the
taxed.
Tri-County region, and they do pretty close to nothing for the homeless population besides ship them to Lansing. It reminds I saw the exact same thing. Like kind of my first experiences like knowing homeless people was when I was in college up in Saginaw. And up there they had the Tri-City area, which is Saginaw, Midland, and Bay City. And basically the policy in Midland, which is the richest of the three cities, like it's where all the wealthy people lived in that area. They literally had a policy that if they found a homeless person in Midland, they would literally transport them to Saginaw
The
and just
busing,
like
yeah.
dump them in Saginaw.
That's a really common thing with busing. They do that.
Mhm.
But I mean, I could even see like, I mean, I think it would be feasible to have a shelter in East Lansing, or depending, because East Lansing homeless, I mean, it's spiking everywhere, but East Lansing specifically, I've never seen that amount of homeless people in East Lansing. I've
And
been around here my entire life. So
there's definitely students that go to MSU who end up homeless too, especially when you consider the outrageous cost of housing in that area. If you don't have loans, like, and something happens, you're screwed there. And you end up having a lot of students drop out of college because they have no place to go.
or like predatory lending places that will fuck you over as well. But yeah, I think we need to be focusing on who do we know in this sphere? How can we get involved? Like power mapping as well. If I'd be down for the question you had about like having private meetings or doing the soft stuff on the side is what I'm the best at. But yeah, I think this is a very worthy conversation, and it's about time we start putting pressure on these people.
I was just going to say, I hear a lot from people in East Lansing, like this is Lansing's problem overspilling to East Lansing, and there needs to be I mean, no, correct.
No, I'm like,
No,
yeah,
I-
with you.
yeah, right. We're on the same page. It's ridiculous that the level of, it was recently called the Enchanted City, and it's no longer the Enchanted City but they blame us for sending people over, and that's just not cool, because it really
What
is a
the
big
fuck?
area thing.
It's time for the proletariat to rise up against bourgeois
Well,
East
also
Lansing.
East Lansing is a sundown town, so
Yeah.
like, are we surprised? But I also see a lot of hope. Like I think, like the youth and wow, you sound really the youth in this town. Like students want to get involved with things, right? They want to do that. We just have to. And also like in activism, just like people want to help, they just don't know how. And so if we can give them a task or something to show up to, or anything like that, people want to help. This is an issue that is across the board. A lot of people. I mean, LGBTQ issues like are very important for folks. Our housing, and so. I know something that this is the thing that's mentioned. I did hear rumblings of this. I don't know when it's going to happen. I am fully for it though. Having a homeless day of protest at the Capitol, where they have a full day where they can just like, I think that there's an issue with pitching tents because of the lawn specifically, but having sleeping bags, just existing on the lawn for the whole day, they're allowed to be there. The obvious concern would be cops at that point with warrants and all of that. But I think that would be amazing, just having as many homeless people out there as possible to just visualize how many people are in Lansing area, you know? So I would be totally down for that kind of protest. Public sleeping as well. Just having more visibility of what is actually happening here. Because I think a lot of times people are more concerned about the aesthetics than actually rehousing these people. They're more concerned about the inconvenience and actually seeing these people's house.
Yep.
So maybe we show up and make them uncomfortable. that sounds like a great plan.
I
I'm down for
mean,
that.
they're definitely doing their best to make the unhoused uncomfortable with like creating structures, like putting in rails on every bench seat so no one can lie on the bench, and taking out the bus shelter in Frandor because
It's
there
called
were too many
architectural
people in it.
violence.
Yeah.
Yeah, they took the shelter out of the CATA station on Frandor, right? They
Yeah.
didn't take this. That'll show that.
Now we just have to sit in the rain, you know.
Mhm.
Mhm.
But then they realized that their employees couldn't go there. They'd lose all their employees. So I don't know. Frandor's a whole other thing because it's like technically Lansing pay. I forget what the taxes are on that, but
I think they originally planned to remove the bus stop altogether, but
they
there
couldn't
was so
because
much
their
protest.
employees. Yeah. But the other thing too is I do have a connection to CATA. Maybe we could pressure CATA to put up more. I'm not entirely sure, so I'm thinking out loud. I have a microphone. It's a dangerous thing. I think those are all my thoughts, unless someone else is. Oh yeah, for sure.
So it sounds like even though like yes, we would love a shelter, it seems like policy change and working on issues around that and addressing the needs with current resources seems to be the direction we're taking at this point. Is everyone kind of in agreement with that, or okay? So probably don't need a feasibility study, so we can probably skip that on the meeting. Though, I would still bring up under feasibility study. I have volunteers and committee members. Uh, we definitely. I think organizing a steering committee within the coalition um, is necessary when taking steps forward to create direction. And I don't want it to just be me speaking at these meetings either. I'd like other people to be in leadership roles on here. Like, I mean, I'll do what I have to, but like, I would love for some of you all to get more involved outside of the meeting if you have the ability to do so. Um, if you want to, just talk to me after the meeting as well. We don't have to go through all that right now, but if you'd like to get more involved, please let me know. I could use all the help I can get, and like we're building a coalition, so we want as many people involved in as many ways possible as we can. Um, so yeah, that kind of goes into next steps as well. In terms of next steps, we do plan to have these meetings regularly from now on. It looks like they're going to be every 2 weeks. About it'll most likely be the second and the fourth Tuesday of each month at 7 p.m. I talked to Jerry about it, got it approved. Basically alternating. I run a support group on the first and third Tuesday, so I just use the alternate time slot to have these meetings. I don't know. I I think yeah, I think having I think a twice monthly meeting is a good rate to do this at. I think if we were to go any less than that, we wouldn't get much done, honestly. So I don't know. In terms of roles and responsibilities, though, for the future, again, if you want to get more involved, let me know. Question is like, what roles do we still need? And I'm not 100% clear on that, and would love any feedback on that. We do have a secretary now, which is awesome because I suck at like keeping track of all that and typing fast enough. So, what other roles do we need though within this group for us to run successfully? Do you feel? I think maybe like a liaison to talk to press, media, and uh, maybe someone to reach out to other organizations and handle like doing the research involved with that. I'm not sure. What are your all's thoughts on what roles are needed in this coalition?
Okay. Sorry. I don't want to take up like all the media, but yeah, like that's what I do for a living. So, and I'm comfortable with press and stuff. But yeah, that's what I like. I want to do more research into this, into like who has funding, and like Mike Carl knows a lot about that with like funding and who has the purse strings and stuff. But also with like city grants and how that works with like religious stuff, and like I'm such a in the weeds nerd about those things that yeah. Mhm. But I also don't want to take someone's if they want to do that. I don't want to take away from them. I'm just going to do it anyways on my own.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
Mhm.
that's
And if
pretty
anyone
much how I got
wants-
this started. So
And if anyone wants to do that kind of role and would like to get trained on it, I'm happy to share that with like part of my thing is, or part of the organization I'm with is like just making organizing as like accessible as possible. So if other people want to learn, like please talk with me. I'll hook you up with my stuff or another coworker that I have. We're all trying to make this as accessible as possible. So
I'm happy to be here. Luna, you're doing a great job. I'm mostly here to learn and listen, but I would just add that, you know, if you're going to have fundraising be a part of this, to just be really careful with the money from the get-go. If at all possible, you'll want to find an accountant to help like take care of that. And I don't know if you've talked to anyone about what a fiscal sponsorship is. Like through a nonprofit, you can do that as like a project. And if you haven't talked to anyone, we can definitely talk about that and use our nonprofit as an umbrella if you don't have anyone else in mind. So keep up the great work.
yeah, finances are definitely going to be a big one. Yeah, a treasure. And I've honestly been trying to figure out like what we do with that exactly. I think that's a great idea, having some intermediary, because I know at this time I really don't want to. I don't know if we really need to organize an actual nonprofit at this point to do what we're doing. I didn't really think so, but yeah, it would complicate things a lot. It's a lot of paperwork. I've tried doing it in the past, and it just honestly wasn't worth it. Like I found I was better off just doing things on my own than trying to run a registered nonprofit, which just was stupid paperwork for the whole $25 we had in the account. So, but yeah, I wasn't real sure how to navigate the whole account funds part of things, because I don't want to just leave it in my bank account. We do have $99 now. I did just pitch at the 99 Problems, but a pitch ain't one beforehand. So we have $99 to work with. I'm assuming a lot of that's going to go towards any printing costs we have for starting up. I know that's usually one of the big costs. I literally I had to print these out at the library today and put it on my credit card because I'm completely broke right now. So, but it's nice to know we'll have at least some funding for printing costs. If anyone has a good printer too, like that would like to offer that service, that could be very helpful. So, any other suggestions, ideas for roles, responsibilities? I don't know about like writing a whole like formal like policy or document for volunteers at this time. I think that would be good to look into for the future. I don't think it's the most pressing concern at the moment, but I think it is something we are going to need to address. But yeah, any other ideas, suggestions?
Should I just keep this? I don't know. It would probably be good to have like some group standards or like agreements of like, this is what we're standing for. This is specifically what, like, it would be good to have a foundations of that. So people ask about the group, we just have like a 1-pager or something. It might be good to have a central email potentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could be an option too, having like a just central communication. Either that or like a signal group or some kind of, depending on how big we get, right? Yeah.
I have it. I just honestly don't use it a ton. Email's good. I honestly personally I use Facebook a ton. I know it's not everyone's thing, but I think we need multiple options in terms of communication. Like Facebook works for me, doesn't work for everyone though. Email I think would be good for others. A signal is great though for doing chat and stuff, and if other people want to take on that responsibility, I just honestly am really bad about checking my signal account. Like, so if someone else is willing to manage the signal aspect of communications, I'm down for that. I'm fine managing the Facebook or putting out emails every once in a while. I already have too many messenger apps on my phone that I have to keep track of as is. So it's hard enough remembering to get on my Discord and check the multiple groups that I have on there. Does anyone really spend all their time on their computer like I often do, that spends a lot of time on Discord or Signal or any of those places, that would like to volunteer as kind of a manager for our media spaces?
Also, that would look good in a resume for like community management or something. Like that could be a draw for that too. I'm all for like using volunteering as like part of resume stuff, to be honest.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on disability, so I don't have much real work experience, but I've done a shit ton. But if I were to rely on just my jobs, they're just gonna have a lot of questions, and that's generally what I find. So I generally do put volunteer stuff as well. Okay, so if we don't have any further suggestions, comments on that, we can talk a little bit about our next, or where are we? 11. Okay, public awareness and advocacy. So, yeah, a big part of these policy changes, as we discussed earlier, is going to be public awareness, advocacy at different levels. Some groups I've worked with have been doing this a bit on the state level. Like Rent is Too Damn High has definitely done a lot of lobbying and stuff. We definitely have a good ally with Emily Devendorf. They seem pretty down for what we're trying to get done. They're sponsoring bills that will hopefully advance the causes we're trying to seek too. So, but yeah, public awareness is going to be key to getting anything done, because without public awareness, people aren't aware of the majority of people aren't aware about what goes on inside shelters whatsoever. And we need that to become open, so people need to know what changes need to take place. because without the public knowledge, we're not going to be able to put any pressure on these organizations to actually make changes. And most places in general tend to resist change because it means more work, and it can be difficult. So public awareness, advocacy, keep putting pressure on the current organizations. I think we've talked enough about that, though. Does anyone have any comments in the way of awareness and advocacy before we move? Or do you just want to move to the question and answer?
Hi, y'all. I'm Frank. This is like both public awareness and advocacy, and also like how we reach some of these organizations. But my understanding is that the City Mission Rescue is funded a lot by church congregations. And I wonder if we could do some research, because I'm pretty sure they're a 501c3, so they have to disclose a lot of their funders. If we could do some research into who those churches are and do outreach to them, ask if people can like speak during a service, all that stuff, because I think that there's going to be a lot of reachable people within individual church congregations. And then if we get them on our side, that would be a lot more pressure towards the City Rescue Mission, because that's like where their funding is. Like that's more of their literal stakeholders, since they don't get like federal or state funding.
So I can somewhat answer that, or give. So I grew up very bigoted, and I have a lot of ideas of who funds these places. One of the main ones is the church I grew up at, and they would be very happy to hear about all the bad things that they'd be very happy that those things are happening. I guess that makes sense. So it's going to be a lot more yes, we need to get track of who's funding and all of that. But unfortunately, a lot of these funders are going to be very happy that these things are happening. So, but yes, but also there's definitely ones who will not be. So it's just shocking. I don't know.
Yeah, even a lot of people who fund groups aren't even really aware of their practices. So yeah, there definitely will be resistance from some of their funders, and some of their funders are happy about the horrible things on their doctrinal statement and stuff. Like I think, yeah, figuring out which ones. It's definitely going to be some research, but definitely figuring out which ones are going to be approachable and prioritize them. But yeah, that's great idea. We do need to definitely outreach to the people who are funding the places that we need to see change in, because money definitely talks, and it's how you get changes made. So any questions questions, comments as we wind the meeting down? Anyone? Did you have something?
I just wanted to say a little bit about an event that our organization has coming up. So Jubilee, the organization I founded, is building a community source permanent supportive housing program, because we have a severe lack of permanent supportive housing in Lansing. And so almost every month, we have what we call community conversations, where we talk about how it's kind of like ongoing training for our mentors, but it's also open to the public for people to come and learn about how we can impact the vulnerable community members in our lives through relationships. Some of the topics we have, sometimes we talked about shame and how like sharing shame or sharing stories in safe places like makes shame go away. So those are just some of the topics. I've talked to a couple advocates about coming to our meeting in December to have a community conversation about how we can support our friends from the LGBTQ community. And I'm hopeful that those plans will go through. And I have personal relationships with staff at all the shelters in Lansing, actually. Mark Chris actually wrote a letter of support for our mission report this year. So I can't guarantee anything, but I'll definitely be inviting them to that meeting if that goes away. I hope it will. So you guys are all invited as well. It just is like the speakers will speak for like 10 or 15 minutes, and then it will just be kind of like a community conversation where we can ask each other questions and listen to the answers in a kind and respectful environment where everyone's experience and perspective is valued. So thanks for letting me share.
Anyone else? Okay. That's it. We'll just start to wind down the meeting. So basically, summarize key points discussed. Looks like we're likely going in the direction of policy change rather than seeking out the feasibility of a shelter at this time. Makes sense, honestly, and it is way more feasible, especially in the short run. Opening a shelter, very difficult unless you have a lot of money behind you. So, we I don't know, we talked about a lot, so hard to summarize it all, but yeah, definitely our next meeting's going to be on November 14th, 7 p.m. If you have any ideas of what things that need to go on the agenda for the next meeting, would like to help out in any ways behind the scenes, feel free to message me whenever. Can message me on Facebook. My private email is victorianoddities@gmail.com if you would like to email me directly. Aside from that, just come talk to me after the meeting if you want. I'm open to talk about whatever. Would love fresh ideas from anyone though. If you know anyone that you think we should reach out to though in the future, please feel free to let us know that as well. We got some names on there of places to reach out to when we discuss that. So hopefully we can keep building the coalition, work towards some policy change, work towards creating more inclusive housing for the unhoused. Again, thanks everyone for coming. It was great hearing from you all. Yeah, so I think that about wraps it up. Also, if any of you know anyone who's interested, I run a support group for queer and disabled individuals here, same time slot, but alternating Tuesdays from this meeting. So, yeah. Thanks everyone for showing up.
I might be able to help with printing, like specifically like poster, like full color printing. Okay. Through my job, we currently get printing services donated to us through Jackson National.